The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has led to skyrocketing oil prices and is contributing to what some are calling a food security time bomb. That's according to humanitarian aid organization, the International Rescue Committee. For more on that, we are joined by Ciarán Donnelly. He's the Senior Vice President of International Programs at the International Rescue Committee, and he joins us in studio. And Ciarán, I appreciate you coming in and speaking to us. Thank you. So, how hopeful are you that this ceasefire will improve the flow of humanitarian aid?
So any reduction in hostilities, reduction in violence is, of course, to be welcomed. First and foremost, for the respite it provides to civilians on the ground in Iran, over 3 million people displaced over the last 5 weeks. It's important to note the continuing effects of conflict in Lebanon, the second deadliest day in 2 years with 100 airstrikes reported. But over the last 5.5 weeks, we've seen the impact of this crisis go far beyond the immediate region. We've seen fuel supplies and impact on our ability to ship pharmaceuticals and therapeutic feeding products mean that our aid operations across the world have been constrained by this. 30% increase in cost of delivery in Somalia, 50% increase in cost of delivering mobile health services in Nigeria. We have supplies for to save 1,000 children's lives with therapeutic feeding products stuck in India that we can't ship out. So we've seen this global effect on the humanitarian aid effort of the IRC and our partners around the UN system over the last 5.5 weeks, which has continued to grow. With the ceasefire, there's some hope that shipping lanes can be opened up and fuel will resume flowing, but that's not going to happen immediately. You can't just flip a switch and things start flowing. So the ongoing impact of this crisis in humanitarian crises and conflicts around the world is going to continue to be felt for some weeks to come. And if peace doesn't hold and if it's not expanded to Lebanon, we'll see the impact on people's lives continue to worsen.
And we're even seeing, with the Iranian state media saying the strait is not open, so there's nothing going through. So you've said this has created a food security time bomb. Do you want to explain a little bit of that and why?
Globally, there are 239 million people estimated by the United Nations to be in need of humanitarian assistance in 2026. That number is almost surely increased over the last 5 weeks by the war in the Middle East and by conflicts elsewhere in the world. Of those people, 37 million of them are assessed to be at emergency levels or higher of food insecurity. Simple terms, that means people just don't have enough to eat. They can't get enough calories for themselves and their family to be able to survive. For those people living in some of the most conflict-affected parts of the world, it's already difficult to find enough food to be able to survive. In the immediate term, the increasing costs of fuel and transport and other supplies are pushing the cost of food in those areas out of the reach of ordinary families, worsening the immediate effect. Over the weeks and months to come, what we'll see is as fertilizer supplies, 30% of world fertilizer comes through the Straits of Hormuz, starts to impact on planting seasons, we'll see reduced availability of food in those places and potentially spikes in global food prices, as we saw with the impact of the war in Ukraine a few years ago. And that's going to push those situations further into desperate food insecurity. So we'll see that 37 million number increase, and we'll see them also become more severely malnourished, with a real possibility that what's currently at a crisis or emergency level will become famine or famine-like conditions in some of the hardest hit places in the world. I'm thinking of Sudan, I'm thinking of Yemen, I'm thinking of countries like South Sudan, places in the Sahel.
And so you're very concerned about just the weeks and months ahead.
Absolutely. We're concerned about the impact today, where it's already harder for us, especially against the backdrop of global humanitarian budget cuts over the last year, to be able to serve people. We're reaching fewer people than we have been historically. But if there isn't a resolution to the situation in the Middle East, not only will civilians in Iran and in Lebanon continue to suffer the impacts of war, but we will see this ticking time bomb, as we've described it, have deathly ramifications around the world.
And what could that look like in terms of just the scale of just that decimation, of that food insecurity, of all of those people so desperate?
Well, we know what it looks like, and we know what it looks like because we've seen famine and famine-like conditions over the last number of years in countries like in Gaza, in Somalia, in Sudan, where people are already living in some of the worst situations of food insecurity globally. We see increased mortality, not just from people not having enough to eat, but because when people hungry, their bodies are weaker and they're more susceptible to diseases like diarrhea or to malaria or to other things that normally a healthy body can fight off these diseases. Young children are particularly vulnerable. So we'll see increased mortality. We'll see people resorting to what we call negative coping mechanisms. That means things like families taking their children out of school and putting them out to work, often in dangerous occupations. We'll see women resorting to transactional sex to be able to earn money for their families. These are the things we see time and again in crises like this. They are preventable if food can flow, if prices can be managed. That requires a sustainable approach to managing and resolving the conflict in the Middle East.
Jeez, it just sounds like a really dire situation for so many people, but appreciate you coming and speaking to us about it. Thank you very much. And that's Ciarán Donnelly from the International Rescue Committee.